Welcome to Turning Pages, the podcast where we explore the power of self-healing, the wisdom in books, and the strength of a positive mindset. I'm your host, Mel, and each week I have the pleasure of interviewing authors, coaches, and everyday people who inspire and encourage us to live our best lives. Together, we'll dive into insightful conversations that help you turn the pages into the next chapter of life. Whether you're on a journey of personal growth or simply looking for inspiration, you're in the right place. Let's turn the pages together.
Hi, Tanisha. Welcome to Turning Pages. So, Tanisha is a certified relationship coach and a financial educator. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the episode?
Yeah, thanks, Mel. So as you already just mentioned, I am a certified relationship coach, certified through the Relationship School, and a financial educator, as you'll come to learn from my experience of working in the financial industry for almost 10 years and just being very passionate about money and money management and all of that. So I've managed to bring the two to serve the people who I absolutely love, which is the Caribbean community, because I was also born and raised in Jamaica. My husband is Trini, and I have been surrounded by Caribbean friends for a very long time. I also lived in Trinidad too for about 3 years. And so I've just been very passionate about wanting to shift our mindset when it comes to relationship and money within the Caribbean community.
Now, let's touch first on the subject of relationships in the Caribbean. I think I've been living here for about 10 years, and I've noticed, well, to be honest with you, I don't think I've ever seen a healthy dynamic of a relationship. If anything, I've been exposed to extreme toxic views of relationship. One of them being the casual cheating culture, where you need a good horn in order to lose weight, or, they may say things like, all men cheat, so just pick one.
Oh,
So we're
wow.
not, yeah, so we're not really given much hope when it comes to the dating scene. And I'm single, and I know a few other single Caribbean women, and they just refuse to date Caribbean men.
Mm.
And even though some of us are both in therapy in dealing with our mental health issues, there's still a lot of disrespect towards both sexes. What are your views on that?
Oh, that is such a open-ended question. There's like so many things I could dive into with that. So in general, my view on what you described is yes, 100%. There is a lot about the culture, I think, that has made it very challenging for us to know how to create healthy relationships. Because in general, like when you study the art and science of how to have healthy relationships with people, like what is the core needs of a healthy relationship, it can be boiled down to four main things. It's about trying to feel safe in your relationship, feeling seen in your relationship, feeling soothed in your relationship, and feeling supported/challenged. It's challenged meaning in a supportive way, right? And so these four core needs, in order for those to be met in a relationship, you kind of have had to experience it at some point in your life growing up. Experience it from the very first relationships you've ever had, which is the relationship with your primary caregivers. When you first came into this world, the first set of people who were holding you and forming a bond with you, that's the very first relationship. That's what you're learning about relationships. And so when you're trying to learn what it means to be safe and seen and soothed and supported, what we demonstrate in the Caribbean culture isn't exactly setting us up to feel that, to really feel what it means to be safe. And so when you now get into your adult relationships, you don't know any better. Like there is nothing that's been wired in your brain to tell you differently. And so you're only practicing what you have learned. And it's that behavior just continues to make it very difficult for you to ever create a healthy relationship of your own, unless you, like you said, go do the work, go try and heal some stuff within yourself, realize like, oh, wait, like this is what happened to me, but it's not normal. It's not normal. It's not healthy. That was never supposed to happen. And then wanting to now shift your mindset and say, okay, well, what can I do differently? How do I need to show up differently in my relationships? And it just takes some rewiring of your brain and just rewriting your beliefs and realizing like, okay, I've got work to do. Like I have to start showing up differently in relationships to create the relationships that I want.
Is there any particular situation that you see amongst Caribbean people when it comes to relationships that is um, stronger than other situations? Any particular topic that people come to you with that seems to be more of a grievance or maybe more popular among the Caribbean community?
Hmm. I think in the end, most of it to me typically comes back to this fear of speaking our needs. It's sort of the people pleasing culture, I would say. That seems to be very, very common amongst the majority of my clients. It's just like they just spend so much time and energy in their relationships doing everything they can to try to please their partner and make their partner happy. And then when they feel like they're not getting it back in return, they're holding on to so much resentment that it just creates this division between them. And they struggle with just even knowing up how to speak up for themselves, how to say like, hey, this is what I want. I've got needs too, and how to do it in a healthy way. Because even if they do try to speak up, they speak up in a way that is like blaming and criticizing their partner and just pointing fingers, which just like makes it so much worse. So I would say, yeah, the two main things then comes back to people pleasing and just ineffective ways of communicating. Like it's just like a big communication problem. We just don't know how to communicate properly.
That's true. For those who are new to the self-help space or um, getting into the mental health and healing their own selves, what would you describe as a people-pleasing tendency? What are the common, I guess, things that manifest in us that could indicate that we are people-pleasing?
That's a really great question. I think people pleasing can be summarized as when you are essentially putting somebody else's needs above yours, in a way that you're neglecting your own needs and in the end feeling resentful for doing so. So if you find yourself doing things to help people, because I want to differentiate those who are genuinely kind and like helping people from those who we help people, but we also help them with something in the back of our head saying like, I'm doing this for you, almost with the hope that someday if I'm ever in this situation, you'll do it back for me. And then when you don't get that back later on, there's like this hurt in there, this anger. You're probably a people pleaser. You're probably a people pleaser in there.
And part of healing the people pleasing, recently on my healing journey, that has coming up for me, the people pleasing. I realized I was seeking approval, I was seeking approval. And then the hardest thing that ended up happening, or one of the challenges I ended up facing, was setting boundaries and not feeling guilt for that. So how do we navigate that when we start, setting healthy boundaries and not feeling guilty about it?
Yeah. Again, I think it does come back to the whole when you're working on yourself and realizing that like I'm worthy. I am worthy to be loved. I don't need to earn your love. And therefore if I set a boundary, I am setting this boundary to protect myself, to protect my values, to protect what's important to me, because I'm worthy of this. And whether or not you approve of this, like, that's okay, because I'm doing this for me. So it just comes back to a lot of self-work on yourself, to just believing in your own worth and your own value, and trusting that you are good enough without what anybody else thinks about you. Like, you are good enough. So that's what it'll come back to be able to set those boundaries and not feel guilty about it. It's your belief in yourself to be that.
When did you discover that growing up Caribbean, that it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be? Now, I wanted to ask you, there's going to be, I guess, two questions here in one. When did you discover that the Caribbean culture was quite toxic and not necessarily the healthiest environment? And what are a few things about the Caribbean culture that actually is healthy?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So it's a two-part question. First one, when did I discover that the Caribbean culture was toxic? I think it might be helpful then to get into sharing maybe a bit about my story and how I got into this work. And then that might hopefully answer that question. And then I'll tackle the next part about what is healthy. So in terms of my story, I was actually born and raised in Jamaica with both of my parents. They were married. They're still married for about 35 years now. So pretty long, right? But I think as a child, I knew that their relationship, something felt off about their relationship, because it never looked like the relationships I saw on TV, at least, and the Disney fairy tale love stories. It just never looked like that. So they were always arguing. They argued a lot about money, a lot, a lot, a lot. And I just felt like my home was usually very tense. It's like we're always, making sure we say the right things, not to do anything that might trip off my dad, because he could also get pretty aggressive, pretty strict. And, we walked on eggshells a lot around him. And I often felt like my mom herself wasn't very happy, because you could tell, right? And I just knew that she wasn't happy. And so it had these moments where whenever she and I were alone, and, she would be all in her feelings, she would be telling me, I don't want this life for you. You need to make sure, study your books, work hard, get a good job, so that you could get a good, earn your own money, so that you will never have to depend on a man any day for anything. Like, she told me that ever since, over and over again as a child. So already, as you can see, just hearing those words, to me, I'm not like seeing, okay, well, what is a relationship supposed to look like? Like, clearly I knew that something wasn't right here. But I knew that there's hope, because that's not what I saw on TV, right? So I knew that something else is better out there. So I took her words of advice, and I said, okay, maybe what I need to do is exactly as she said, do well in school, get a good job, focus on making that money, because hopefully, if and when I start to make a lot of money and I have my partner, we will never have to argue about money, and therefore we will have a healthy relationship. And that's what I thought naturally. And so that's exactly what I did. And I did really well in school. I graduated with a bachelor's degree. I graduated with a master's degree. I spent approximately 10 years in the finance industry. I learned a lot about money management, and I got really, really, really good at managing my own money. And then I got married. And I actually expected at that point in my life, like, I'm set. I've checked all the boxes, this is good. We're solid. So I expected my life to just be much easier than what I witnessed with my parents growing up. Because one, I was marrying my best friend. So that was important. Like, we already had a lot of love between us, right? So it's like, whew, great. And then two, we were never going to argue about money because I was never going to depend on him for it. So we're set. And so got married, we're moving together, things are okay. And then the honeymoon phase just starts to wear off. And you start to now realize that here you are with a completely different human being with different backgrounds and experiences. And it just felt like this simplest thing was causing just random arguments between us. The simplest thing. Like it's just, we were filling out a form together in the beginning of our marriage. And I think just how we were reading the instructions on the paper, we just had a different way of interpreting it. And us talking about that difference of interpretation led to an argument. Like the simplest things. And so over time, these things kept piling up, and this is where the people pleaser in me started to really shine. I was just doing like all I had to do to like keep him happy, just make sure he's happy. Whatever he wants, give it to him. Even if I could feel like I don't want that, but as long as I know it will keep some peace, I'll just do it. And what started to happen is over time, I think I started to resent him because things were just like piling up. And I just realized like, okay, I was just like unhappy. Like I was just burying things one after the other and getting up every day and pretending like everything was fine. And everybody was looking at me and saying like, oh, she has a great husband, she has a beautiful kid, she has a nice house, a good job, like, she's good, she's set. But somehow I felt like I was miserable, like I was dying on the inside, right? And so I knew something was off, but I didn't know what it was. And that point was when I checked myself into therapy because I was like, something must be wrong with me. What is wrong with me? And it's when I went into therapy and I started to like get some things off my chest and I started to make some connections with my childhood. I started to realize why I behave the way I behave. And things started to align with like, okay, my culture had a role to play here. But then even after therapy, I would go home and while I felt okay there because I got things off, I'd come home and I still felt like I was still having the same issues. Like I still didn't know how to communicate any differently. I didn't know how to get him to understand what I was trying to say. So I knew that I needed more. I needed more than just therapy. So that's what got me into this like drive on a mission to figure out a solution to my problems. And I went on just like Googling, trying to like figure out what else is out there. And I just became very obsessed at that point, just starting to learn about the brain. I learned about psychology. I started reading a lot of books, which I know you'll probably ask me about later on. Relationships, how our childhood has shaped a lot of who we are today. I started to see how all of that impacted the way we think, the way we feel, the decisions that we make, especially when it comes to money, and how a lot of that is really just us sabotaging our own wellness, relationships, and financial success. And it's through that journey was when I just kind of became obsessed with like, as I was learning these stuff, I just wanted to teach it to everybody around me. Because I started to realize like, that's when I really started to look at all the people around me to figure out, okay, who is actually like living these things that I'm reading about? Because they're the better way. So who is living it? And I couldn't find anybody. I couldn't find anybody. So I'm like, and all these people obviously who are closest to me are all Caribbean people. So I'm like, there's something here. This is really embedded into our culture. And that's when I was like, okay, I want to like do something about this. I want to help these people in a very effective way, a professional way. And that's what got me into looking into, what it takes to get certified as a relationship coach and, started my process on that to get that certification and then just like really now get into it and start coaching people and just helping them rewire their brains because that's what it comes down to, like that ability to just rewire that to create the life that you truly want. So I know that was a very long-winded answer, but I just felt like it was important to just walk you through my story, my journey, just to see how I got here and realize like it's through that entire process that I realized like our culture was
Yeah.
not setting us up for success. I know that answered the first part of your question, hopefully.
Yeah, no, it surely does. And I know a lot of people actually like I always say me search is research.
Mm-hmm.
Like research.
Correct.
No, as a research is research, right? So like you're
Yeah.
researching on things and then you end up finding out what more about this. I know the older heads in the Caribbean are not susceptible. They're not very open
Mm-hmm.
towards this, I guess, our generation that's moving forward to healing and therapy and different modules of thinking, and then how this stems from stuff is really breaking generational curses in terms of thinking, and there was something that you were saying, where you were like, this is not, you're not seeing any other example, but then you're also not seeing change. And then I think part of our Caribbean culture is a sort of scarcity mindset. So
Mm-hmm.
this also goes into like relationship and money and stuff. So we might stay in unhealthy patterns and relationships due to scarcity, due to
Mm-hmm.
lack of like, we're not gonna get another partner or, something
Correct.
like that. So
Yeah.
when it comes to money, we also tend to kind of behave the same way.
We think the exact same way. We
Yeah.
behave the exact same way. We believe like the money will run out and like, you have to just keep it here, hoard it, don't spend it, don't invest it. Like we're very hesitant to take risk. We also don't trust people. It's just, yeah, it's huge. It's a very big scarcity mindset.
Yeah, and I think we've also drifted away from the tribal beings that we used to be, that community that used to build us. You can
Mhm.
go to your neighbor's house for a cup of sugar, and
Oh yeah.
now we don't have that. And I don't think that's just Caribbean. I actually think that's worldwide. We're no longer community based. We're more individual based, you
Yeah.
know.
I
Um,
agree with that. I agree with that. But I also share in more so from the Caribbean perspective. I think something that even impacted us in the Caribbean wanting to keep to yourself, because even in just my own experience growing up in Jamaica, like the violence really took a toll on us, right? And the more we kept putting ourselves out there, we kept um, elevating to certain levels of success, even in our family, we became targets. Like we became targeted by gunmen, by people who want to just keep us down or just take what we have. And so with knowing that that's happening around you, you want to get a bit more protective of your stuff. You now start to feel like, oh, well, I can't let people know about this. I can't take certain risks. I can't do certain things because bad things can happen. And so that mindset alone limits us. But it's also a mindset that is trying to protect us within our culture. So it's a lot. It's a lot. So I agree with you that yes, overall, there's a problem that affects the world in general and just us like not having that same tribal mindset, but just also our culture adds an extra layer on top of it of wanting to protect ourselves.
yeah, and the other thing that I noticed too, while being here, the culture among, okay, so in the Trinidad, I think this could work for probably all Caribbeans, but white Caucasians are usually ranked as a better hierarchy, right?
Mhm, mhm,
So in here, the Syrians are the 1%, as you would say, right? So the better
mhm.
hierarchy. So then another thing I'm noticing around the Black and the Brown community is that we're in competition with each other, right?
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're in competition with each other. And then the other thing I've noticed how, let's say the Syrians do money differently, they support each other. Like
Yes. Yes.
you can come out making this empty box, like a book box. You can come out making it, and they're gonna have it in every single one of their stores, their cousin's stores, their grandpa's stores, every single thing. That's one thing I admire about them, that they support each other. And that's one thing I realized that we do not have in our community. So when
Oh,
I
you
hear,
have nailed it. You
yeah.
have nailed it.
So when
Yeah.
I have discussions, because my father and his brothers are businessmen, and, you always hear the conversations, which is the older, like, oh yeah, these people are like this or whatever. There's always some sort of racial conversation that probably sitting in. And I remember
Mhm.
one day I decided so dearly to open up, and I said, well, if we thought and supported each other like the Syrians did, who knows where we could have been. But
Mhm.
no, your cousin opens this store, the other cousin's bad talking it, you know.
Yeah, and then it's like it's almost like we now need to compete against each other, right? And it's like
Yeah,
there's like this underlying hoping that the other person would fail because then it's like you get to be like, hey, yeah, see, I knew that
yeah,
was never going to work. Like it's like that's
yeah,
something that you're so proud of, a badge of honor that you get to put on after when you're right,
yeah,
instead of like
yeah,
really
and I,
jump, like, hey,
yeah,
like I think that's such a great idea. Like, oh, you know what else you could do to make this successful? Like, no, we don't
yeah.
think like that.
We don't think of like, and I wish we did think about it. 'Cause I remember even one time sitting in a yoga studio, and the yoga teacher, she's she said she was doing well when she opened up her studio. Now she's black, right? So
Mhm.
she was given the advice that, hey, you're doing well, people are watching you, whatever, don't buy a new car, right? So, and they're
Mhm.
like thinking, okay, where is this going? She's like, yeah, because you know how our people are, they're gonna think you have money and they're gonna want to borrow money. And I'm like, hold up a second. I was just like, so you're preventing yourself from bettering yourself for probably having a reliable vehicle because somebody is gonna, all right, give you maybe a little bad eye or something like that, but you're elevating yourself. So, but you don't want your community to see that you're doing well. I could not understand it. And eventually I had to leave because the conversation started to get like a poverty mindset. Uh,
Yes.
and I could not stand it. And then I've just keep noticing it doesn't matter if it's the Indian or Black community down here where everybody's against one another as if there's some sort of lack of resources.
Yes. Yeah. And because somehow I think we grew up believing that. Like, as you just, it's been passed down from generations to generation. So that is what our parents believe. Like they deep heartedly believe this. It's in there. And so it's for us to be able to wake up and realize, like, wait, like, there isn't a lack of resources. There isn't a lack of money in this world. Like, you and I can both be rich. Like, it, because you get rich doesn't mean like I'm going to be poor. And the minute that you can actually realize that, then you can start to be like, wait, I can support you. I can cheer you on. Oh yeah, you can cheer me on too. Like, we're doing this together.
Yeah,
And my next, like, money is not running out. Like, there is so much money in this world that we all have that ability to get there, but we don't believe that. Like, we
yeah,
don't, because that's not what we were told. We were
yeah.
never told that. So you nailed it. Like,
Yeah, no, because I see it, and then even the like for my I remember my mom growing up because when I had to, I'm still actually in the process of trying to unlock some of these limiting beliefs. I have money,
Mhm.
and I kind of wish I was doing this in my 20s. So I would have invested in stocks and stuff like that in my 20s
Yeah.
rather than waiting until 41. And when you're 41 and single, it's scary because you're not no longer having, you don't have a spouse to lean on, so it's just yourself. So I wish I was financially educated, I guess you
Mhm.
could say, about money and setting myself up for retirement because with age, as much as I'm try to be healthy, with age still has complications, unexpected doctor visits, and so
Yes,
forth.
100% understood.
And one, I remember reading a book and going through the money blocks. I remember my mom saying that to me. She's like, because my mom's very people pleasing
Mhm.
and comes from like, you shouldn't want much,
Mhm.
once you have, which made me feel like just wanting was bad, just
Oh, yes,
wanting, right?
exactly.
And when it
Exactly.
came to like finding a spouse or something like that. She's like, oh, money isn't everything. Money isn't everything. I was like, Mom, I cannot take love to the grocery store, right?
Yeah.
You know, I was
Yeah.
like, I understood where she was coming from, but the message was clear. You know, it was like, oh, money isn't everything, but yeah, no, money is important. So we just bypass where we have this social sort of like bypassing of the topic, you know, with money. And then like with my father, it's what is it? Go Paul's luck, not see Paul's luck or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
meaning you're probably destined for if you haven't gotten it by now, you're probably destined for it, you know?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So that's a little bit about my money thing. So let's just switch over to the financial aspects because I'm really excited about this one. Um, Seeing
Oh,
that we
you're
have,
already saying so much. You're already highlighting so much about like money in our culture, though. Like
yeah.
just nailing it to
Well,
talk
it's me
about
being
like
a
where those beliefs came from and how limiting they are. And that is essentially what I'm trying to
yeah.
like dive into with people and realize like, wait, like you need to
Even
rewrite that.
yeah, and even the way people I'm noticing down here, even the way people they manage their businesses in terms of their employees and stuff like that, I don't think they've caught up to the fact that that has changed. People actually want to feel inspired, motivated, and seen, not in the
Correct.
slavery times where you know, I still
You're
feel
just
like
being
we're
told, just do what I say.
yeah,
Yeah.
just do what
Do
I
not get
say.
questions. Yeah.
And I feel like the working culture down here is exactly like that. And I'm experiencing it myself as an employee.
Mm.
It's just like there's no advancement. There's like, okay, so what? You have a job, that do it. Right? But you're no
Yeah, stop
longer,
complaining. Like,
yeah,
you
still
know,
stop
because there's
complaining.
already that mindset, like that's just what working it, like that's just what you're supposed to do. You're supposed
Right.
to get a job, go do what you have to do, get money and go home.
Yeah.
Like nobody talks so like this talk about wanting to do things you're passionate about and like
Yeah.
what? Girl, shut
Yeah.
up.
No, seriously. And I've actually seen two businessmen down here. And surprisingly, one is in his late 20s, the other one's 35. And they're
Mhm.
doing leadership differently. And I admire them for that. They are actually, they take their employees out for, you know, an employee, you know, working together, but it's an outing for the staff. The other one took a couple of his employee to a convention and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So he's not just leveling, they are not just leveling up themselves, but they're leveling up their employees with,
Everybody.
yeah,
Yep,
with
correct.
them.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
I watch it and I'm in just awe and amazement because the businessmen that I work with are working under some sort of slavery time. So, and I'm like, but they're in their 60s, so I don't think
I
their
hope they're
mindset's
not
gonna
listening to
change.
your podcast.
That's okay. Yeah. Um, but I realize even leadership is changing, and we have to get on board too, is how we work with our staff and, you know, with money and inspiring them as well, you know.
Mhm.
But with
Exactly.
I guess because I'm seeing it in terms of the community of the differences with people who have, and then the people who are struggling or just in the same position in the Caribbean, what's the difference? And it really is mindset and it's supporting each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So it comes back to your beliefs and it comes back to the relationships because that support that you talk about is really it's relationships. Learn how
Yeah.
to have good, healthy relationships and you'll be able to support each other. But
Yeah. So
exactly.
with money and finances, because I loved you did, I think, a 5-part series on unlocking
Mhm.
your limiting beliefs around money. What
Mhm.
are some of the major limiting beliefs amongst the Caribbean people?
Oh, major limiting beliefs. There's so much. Where do I start? I think you already touched on so many of it though. It's a scarcity. That's like number one for me. I feel like it's a lot of the Caribbean people I talk to who are struggling financially. It's it's this scarcity is in two ways. How do I? There are those who don't even spend because they're just trying to like save in every possible way, and they buy the cheapest possible things, and they just, they're super cheap. Super, super cheap. And then there are those who are on the opposite extreme where they just spend and they spend what they don't have, but
Oh,
they
sorry, I want to cut you off there with the cheap part. Is there a difference
yes,
between being cheap and frugal?
100%. 100%. There is a difference between cheap and frugal. Being frugal, for me, is when you have a very clear goal or object, a vision that you're working towards, and you are consciously clear-headed. You're making conscious, clear-headed decisions that are aligned with your vision. And so you know how to manage your money accordingly, which would mean cutting back on certain things, making choosing more affordable options over the other options, knowing that there's a bigger picture in mind, a bigger goal in mind. That's where frugality shines. Cheap is you're just outright choosing to purchase this brand because it is the cheapest. I don't care that the other one has these other features or might be better quality and could last me a longer time. I'm not even studying any of that. I'm not even looking at that. This is not about working towards a goal. This is nothing. This is just, I have a decision to make. And the only thing I'm basing my decision on right now is the price. Like, that is purely being cheap because you're not even factoring other things to make this an informed decision. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, because I remember having a conversation with a cousin of mine, and there was a guy. I was wondering, I'm like, I can't figure it out. I was like, is he cheap or is he frugal? Because to me, he's giving me cheap vibes. I was just like,
Right,
I was
right.
just
Yeah.
like, okay,
So I
how
feel
did
like as the outsider looking on, it might be harder for you to tell unless you are really trying to understand the person's decision behind it.
right?
So if you get curious with them and you're like, I'm just curious, like why would you
Yeah.
choose that over this, or why spend that amount and not this amount? And in the end, their answer just still comes back to like, well, because that one's just cheaper. Then
Hmm.
probably it's just a matter of being cheap. But if they could explain to you like, oh, well, I understand all these things at play. And at the same time, there are these other things that I have to think about. And for right now, it just makes more sense for me to go with this because this will free me up to have money towards X, Y, and Z for other things. That's being frugal. Like,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, big, big, big difference. You'll only know it if you get curious with them and just try to understand their mindsets around, try to understand why they made that decision to the point that you really understand it. And then you could decide for yourself, okay, based on all that they just shared, is that a cheap decision or a frugal decision?
Right. So besides the not spending, what was the other one? Because I cut you off there when you
Oh
were telling
yeah.
me the other one.
Right. Yeah. So there are those who don't spend, and then there are those who just spend money that they don't have. Um, and so with the ones who are spending money that they don't have, there's so much in that. Um, a lot of it really comes back to um I would say more like external validation. It's just like
Emotional spending?
no, no, I
No.
would not 100% emotional spending. So, some of it is emotional spending in there. It's more just a show that they're trying to put on. Um, it's more like I need to look a certain way, play a certain part. And so it they're I'm trying to figure out how best to explain this to link it back to the scarcity in there because it still comes from a scarcity mindset in that there's a part of them that doesn't believe that they will ever actually have the money that they need to have to afford these things someday. Does that make sense? They don't believe that that's possible. So they've managed to condition their mind to say like, hey, everybody lives in debt anyway. Like it's fine. Like debt is just a part of life. So I will just rack up my credit card. I'll just spend money that I don't have. And then I'll just, keep working to pay off this debt, pay interest on a consistent basis, and just keep maintaining this debt. And they're doing it that way because subconsciously they don't believe the other way is possible. Like they don't believe that it's actually possible for me to live within my means right now and invest accordingly and earn, like, manage my money accordingly so that I can build up to the life that I want to create. So yeah, because they don't believe that, which is where I'm saying like the scarcity comes in, because they don't think that is possible for them, they live this way right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense because it would be like, okay, I need to drive this car because what would they think of me? Kind of
Oh yeah,
thing. Yeah. Or I need
exactly.
to wear this brand because, otherwise I won't be known as, elite or
And that's where I say the
whatever.
external
Yeah,
validation.
yeah.
Like
Okay,
they're
so
they're
that
doing
makes
that more
sense.
so now for just like how other people look at them,
People,
how other people think about them. It's not, there's nothing internally really for them in that.
so you mentioned debt. What
Mhm.
is there such thing as healthy debt? Is debt okay?
Um, See, I know that there are so many controversial
Yeah,
discussions
because the reason why I
yeah.
ask that, because I read You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen
Mhm.
Serrano.
Yes,
And one of the topics, now she does go into limiting
I
beliefs
have that
and
book. I didn't read it yet though, but it's
yeah,
also
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So I remember reading that book, and one of the things that she advocates to is like debt isn't bad, right? And she's not the first one that I've seen within the financial space saying that debt isn't bad, especially when it comes to like if you're pursuing your dreams or your business and stuff like that. We kind of have to go into a little bit of debt. But
Mhm.
when is death healthy and when is it okay?
Mhm.
Because because we could be in either spectrums. We could either be, oh no, we're saving the money in the mattress and we're not going into debt at all, or we could
Mhm.
be in serious debt and we continually pile it up. But what is healthy debt though? What can healthy debt look like for us?
Yeah, so I don't try, for me at least, when I'm thinking about money management and all that, I'm not labeling that as healthy or bad in any way. Because what I found too, at least with the people that I help, if you try to paint this label as like you're in bad debt, it puts a whole negative connotation on the thing. And it makes it harder for you to pay it off because you just have like so much guilt and shame and all that with it. And so I still would want them to realize like the debt that they have, it afforded them a lot of things in their life to this point that they're probably very grateful for. Maybe some stuff they could have done without, but in any case, there was a learning opportunity in there that they can be grateful for. They learned something in the process. So in the end, like I don't want you to be left feeling like this was bad. This was a bad thing. I want you to get to a point where you're grateful for this debt because it's there. And now you have a bit more clarity and understanding as to, well, what my vision is, what my goals are, my financial goals, and a plan to actually get there. And part of that plan to get there might involve figuring out how to pay off this debt to get there. And so, um, in those cases, as I said, I'm not having a conversation about good debt and bad debt, but it's more like, let's figure out what your vision is. Let's look at what your financial picture is right now. What is the gap between the two? And how can we create a plan to get there? And as part of creating that plan to get there, there are so many different tactics that you can use where it may involve using debt. So even for us personally, we have found creative ways to use debt. And it's just weird saying it like that. But we have taken money, for example, from a home equity line of credit and invested it into something that was going to give us a far greater return than the money we had to pay on interest on the home equity line of credit. So just understanding how money works and knowing how to do that, in the end, when I get back that bigger return, I clear off that debt and I am now sitting in a positive. So I have just used debt to be able to make me more money. I have taken the bank's money to make more money for myself. So that could be a healthy way to use debt. But it's again, it's not how I think about it. Like I don't try to put that label. It's just like, let's understand how money works. Let's know that there is a way you can take money that is not yours to make money, to make more money. And there is a way that you can take money that is not yours and cause yourself to be in a very awkward position that makes it hard for you to get out. And so let's try to limit ourselves from doing that one and do more of the other one, where if it is you want to take other people's money to make more money, let's learn how to do so in a smart way and avoid taking money that is not ours and now feeling like, oh crap, like I have to pay you back and I don't know how to pay you back. And now I have to go spend the rest of my life in a job that I don't like just so that I could keep paying you back. Like does that make sense?
Yeah, and I actually thought, because I lived in Florida for about 5 years, and what I had noticed was the American culture wants you in debt. I mean, there was every single
Yes.
major Kohl's, Marshalls, like everybody offered me a credit card.
Yes.
Everybody offered me a credit card, and I was just like, I always said no because I don't believe in living, above my means and just saying, hey, I could rack up $30,000 in debt and be okay with it. But I had noticed it. It was like every time, Target, everywhere, it was just like, do you want a credit card? Do you want a credit? I was like, no, I do not.
Yeah. So even just to touch on that for a bit, as I told you, I worked in the finance industry for
Yeah.
almost 10 years. And so working in the bank, one of my roles was a product analytics manager within the Caribbean, servicing the bank throughout different Caribbean islands. And my job was essentially looking at the data of how people spend and how they use our accounts and things like that, and figuring out how I can essentially get more money out of them. So how I could charge them more fees, how I could look at the people who are more likely to use their credit cards to put on things, and they probably won't pay off the credit card balance right away. So we'll be able to collect interest on them. Like it's, as a bank, that's how we make money. I don't work for the bank anymore, but I'm talking as if I did. So yeah, thinking back to the days when I worked there, the hat that I had to wear is like, it's still a business, right? And a business needs to make money. So their goal is to make money. And the way that they make money is by fees and charging you interest. And so to charge you interest, they have to give you money. They have to lend you money. You have to take that money. So they don't want to lend you the money and have you just give it back to them right away. I don't make any money from that. That's not my goal. So as a bank who is a business, you have to realize like they're just doing their jobs. Like their job is to make money. So yes, that's what they're going to do. But you, as the consumer, you have to understand how money works. You have to learn how money works and know how to make your money work for you so that you don't fall into those traps. Now, again, I'm not saying don't ever find yourself in a situation where you should never ever pay interest to the bank. Like, come on, that doesn't make sense. But be smart about it, because as I just shared, like we have intentionally put ourselves in a situation where we had to pay interest to the bank, but we did it because we know we were getting a bigger return somewhere else. And so that return was going to help cover what we have to pay to the bank, but also help us to pocket far more, right? So you just have to get creative with all of this, knowing that, okay, well, I don't have that money sitting in my account, but I could take it from the bank. And so the bank will help me to do this idea that I have. And in the end, I'm going to win bigger than the bank. That's all it comes down to.
Do you think women are scared to learn about money? Do you,
Do I think women are scared to
or
learn about?
not necessarily scared, but intimidated?
definitely most money conversations I have tend to be with men,
Mhm.
for sure. I think when I have money conversations with women, it's in a different tone where they're usually like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, or just tell me what to do. Or, it's just like this kind of
So how
laid back,
can we, go
already
ahead.
accept defeats. Yeah.
Yeah. So how can we as women educate ourselves about money? Like where can we start? I know there's blogs and books and stuff like that because I'll be honest with you, it was only until I read, I think it was Your First 100K,
Hmm.
um, The Financial Feminist.
Hmm.
When I read her book last year that I opened a high yield savings account in Canada and I started a sinking fund and all of these things, but the language was really new to me. Although I was listening to money books by other gurus, but with the Roth IRA and the 401k and stuff like that, but I wasn't in the US environment at the time. So it was sort of like, okay, you guys are just sending codes to me.
Yeah,
So
and I think that will still be a lot of the challenges because I think for me personally as well, like I said, my ability to learn what I learned came from being exposed in the
Mhm.
finance industry, having worked in it and almost like being forced to just like learn it because I'm in it. Outside of that, for me to get smart about it and figure out what else is happening. It is just reading books and blogs, as you said. And similar to you, I would read a lot of these books and they would all talk about things in the US that are not very relevant to there. But I try to understand it though. So like I would look into, okay, like if they're talking about the Roth IRA, well, what is that? And do we
Mhm.
have something similar in the Caribbean? And then just try to, okay, even if we don't have a similar account, like what is the idea behind it? How are they actually helping you? How is it making you more money? Why is this a good thing? And how can I take that similar concept, that idea, and get creative with the accounts that we do have here and the packages that are available throughout the Caribbean? So
Yeah.
it's just I think it's still exposure, but not necessarily trying to limit yourself to only what is relevant to your culture. Just know what is being done with money
Yeah.
throughout the world.
Yeah.
Just learn that. Just read
Yeah, because
and
even
get curious.
investing in stocks and stuff like that, and I found for me, actually investing in stocks was more, um, the dividends was actually more than the bank.
Mhm.
So, you know, so
Exactly.
so things
Exactly.
like that. But I do notice like with women and money, one, I find we're not educated enough, and I feel there's a bit of hesitancy. Speaking from experience, I feel like I had a wall, almost like it's almost like a door I didn't want to open, like I was forbidden to open it. Yet I'm put in the environment as a single female to figure this world out, which part of the figuring this world out is figuring my money out.
Yeah,
But when I started learning about stocks and all these things, I felt like I was opening a forbidden door that wasn't allowed for me. And
yeah,
I'm sure that came from, limiting beliefs and stuff like that. But then again, nobody really told me, Melissa, your finances are in your hand.
exactly.
It's not in someone else's hand, and don't rely on someone else, you know? Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
um,
I
so
think to that point, there are a lot of people who recognize that there are these gaps for women, especially. So I do know that there are other people starting these initiatives to just focus on how to educate women. And I can't name them off the top of my head. I know that there was one I saw some time ago that was specifically trying to teach women how to invest. And if you just do like Google searches on those things, you will see a ton of them that people are out there trying to like make this a bit more conversation just to get us talking about it, not making it feel so taboo. So yeah, in my space in particular, as I said, I introduced myself as a financial educator primarily for that reason, because the clients that I work with, I want to have, like, I'm not trying to be your advisor. I'm not telling you how to invest your money or what to do with your money. but I'm trying to help you learn about money, learn how it works, and learn how to think about managing it, understanding what your goals are and how to create a plan to achieve that goal. Like just having the education behind it so you can know the questions that you need to ask when you go to a bank or you're sitting down with your financial advisor. You're not feeling like, oh, I have no idea what you're talking about. Just do what you want with my money. It's, like I want you to feel a bit more empowered just because you understand, like, oh, that's what a stock is. That's how that works, like that's it. That's how I'm doing my part. But yeah, there are a ton of other resources I would say out there if you feel committed enough to changing your mindsets around it. There's so much for you to find.
I actually found recently for me on my financial journey that following females, women, financial advisor, I find I take in the information a lot better than
Yes,
as opposed to me listening to like Dave Ramsey. I believe that's his
yes,
name, right?
yeah,
Of his approach and stuff. Now
yeah.
there is other people that I would listen to, like Myron Golden and stuff like that, but the approach that I find, like my Rich BFF or the Financial Feminist, it's sort of breaking down to a language that I could understand, but I'm also not being shamed
Yes.
for not knowing. Um, which brings me now to budgeting,
Hmm.
right? How important is budgeting for us?
So I think there are so many people in this world, when they hear budgeting, they have very different views on what that means. So I usually don't use the word budgeting just because I know that, like I know how people think about it. And so I essentially talk about having a money plan or a spending plan, which in essence is the exact same thing. But some people hear budgeting and you think immediately about, okay, you're now telling me, okay, I make $100 every month, and out of that $100, 10 have to go here, 20 have to go here, 5 have to go here, and that's it. That's what a budget is. Very clear allocation for your money. And so when the month starts to progress and you life is lifing and you realize that this thing that I said was only $20, somehow something happened and it had to be $40 and like everything goes out of whack. It's like, yeah, this doesn't work for me. Screw it. I can't do this. And the whole budget falls flat, right? I do it a different way where when I think about it more as a money plan, I'm starting again with knowing what your goals are and knowing how we need to work towards those goals. And so when you're working towards those goals, you're looking again at the money that comes in and you're saying, okay, what realistically happens in my life? Let me just see what my pattern has been for the last few months with regards to these different things that I have to spend on. And that's realistic. So I'm not even saying like this is the money I'm putting aside. I'm just saying what happens? How am I spending my money? And based on that, I'm saying, okay, these have to take care of these specific bills and expenses that are hard, mandatory things. Like there's no negotiating here. I can't change it. I have to pay my mortgage. I have to pay this bill. Like, this is a must. And so I know that and I set that aside. I pull that out of it and I say, okay, whatever is left over now, how do I distribute that across my savings, my investments, and what I call my guilt-free spending? And so whatever has to go to savings and investments, I automate it. Like that money is just coming out before I even get to see it, because I've done the math. I know what I need to be able to achieve these goals that I have set. And so this is what I've decided to automate going forward. $50 need to come out to go to my savings. $100 need to come out to go to my investments. And that's automated. I'm not thinking about it. My bill payments are also automated. I'm not thinking about it. So when I create that system and it's automated, whatever is left back, because everything has been taken out to go to where they're supposed to go, whatever is left back is what I know is for me. It's what I get to spend on whatever the hell I want because I still need to live my life, you know? And so just knowing what that number is after I do all that analysis, I know going forward, okay, I have about $200 or $300 or whatever that number, $500 on a month. That is just mine. And so I now don't feel like this is limiting me. Like I'm not feeling like, oh crap, I could have only spent this much at the movies and then I have to spend this much on food. Like, it's just like I have this $500 to work with. That's what I could spend however I want. It's just more freeing. But to answer your question, how important a budget is, it again, for me, it's a plan. Having a plan is extremely important for your money. It's about just being able to tell your money where it should go versus your money is just going places and you don't even know where. And therefore your money is controlling you. And now you're just like figuring out how to pay bills and everything every month. So yeah.
Would you recommend, before someone getting a money plan, would you recommend that they track their spending, like write down everything, how they spend, and to have a picture of how their money goes? I did that once and I was just like, girl, you need to stop reading and eat a little less.
Yeah. So I think it depends on how you typically spend your money. So if you are somebody who use a lot of cash, like you spend with a lot of cash in general, then yes, it might make sense to start just keeping a note of what you spend on and how much you spend. But
Mhm.
if your habit of spending is primarily on your cards, like you're using your banking cards to spend, it's already there. It's on your
Yeah.
statements. And so what I do, the exercise I do get my clients to do involves filling out a spreadsheet essentially and reviewing those bank statements and putting in the amounts that they've spent within the last 3 months at least. I do a minimum of 3 months. Like, let's just review what your spending looked like for the
Yeah.
past 3 months in all these different categories. And then to your point, you'll get to see that. You'll get to be
Yeah.
like, oh crap, that's how much I've been spending out. So
Yeah.
exactly. In the end, I recommend that you do take some time to look at where is your money going. That's it.
Yeah.
Where has your money been going?
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure. Where can people reach you at? Do you have a
Yeah,
website, social media?
thank you for having me. You can find me at on Instagram at the Mini Insights, and my website should be up and running by the time this podcast is released. So
Yeah.
it's theminiinsights.com.
Okay,
So
great. And one, before you go, I always ask my guests, is there a book or a podcast or anything that has inspired you that you can share with us?
yeah, I think the number one book for me that changed the game and created this obsession for me with the brain and just like shifting our beliefs and realizing like how anything we want is possible is Breaking the Habits of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza.
Would you believe I'm actually reading that right now?
Oh my gosh, really?
Yes.
That is
My
insane.
Yeah,
Oh,
my and it's identity shifting. So I'm actually listening to it on audiobook.
oh my God. I listened to it first on audiobook and then I was like, no, I have to buy it. So I
Yeah.
listened to it, and then I went and I bought the hard copy and now I have the hard copy and it's just like I love
Yeah.
that. I could read it. I feel like it's one of those reads I will do a few times throughout the year just
Yeah.
because it's so good. It's so good. And
Okay,
it
wow. Okay, so
shifted
I'm
so much
definitely
for
on the
me.
right track.
You are on the right track. It shifted so much for me.
Okay, great. I'm definitely going to link the book. Well, thanks
Yeah.
again for coming on. Okay. Hold on, right?